Let's take a look at comparing fractions. We might be asked to compare 7/10 and 6/10. When we're comparing fractions, we can write whether or not they are greater than, less than, or equal to each other. In this case, we know that 7/10 is greater than 6/10. Nice thing about comparing these two is that the denominator is the same. Again, when the denominator is the same for those two fractions, all we do is we just compare the numerators. So we know that 3 is greater than 2. And again, since the denominators are the same, we can write 3/5 is greater than 2/5. For this last one here, we know that 2/4 is what 3/4? 2/4 is less than 3/4. Now, if we had written an equivalent fraction for 2/4, we know 2/4 is equal to 1/2. So 1/2 is also less than 3/4. The thing to remember is that we want to have those denominators the same, so we can just compare the numerators. So what do we do when those denominators are not the same? This is what we do. We find a common denominator. We find a common denominator. So we might be trying to compare 2/3 and 8/12. I'll write those two fractions out for you. As you see there, the denominators right now are not the same. And then so we need to find a common denominator. 3 times 4 is 12, so a common denominator for these two fractions is 12. To get 2/3 to 12ths, we need to multiply the numerator and denominator by 4. That way we'll have a common denominator. So 2/3 is just really 8/12. So in between those two fractions, we can put an equal sign. Here's another example. 3/4 and 4/6. If we think about sixes, we have 6 times 1 equaling 6, 6 times 2 equaling 12, 6 times 3 equaling 18. We think about multiples of 6. If we think about multiples of 4, we have 4, and then 8, and then 12, and then 16. And a common multiple is 12. So we can go to 12ths again. Where to get to 12ths, you go 4 times 3. If we multiply by 3 in the denominator to find that equivalent fraction for 3/4 and 12ths, we also multiply by 3 in the numerator. 3 times 3 is 9. So 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12. 4/6 and 12ths. To get from 6 to 12, we multiplied by 2. And if we do the same thing in the numerator, 4 times 2 is 8. So now we have denominators that are the same. So we can compare 9 with 8, and we know that 9 is bigger than 8. So that 3/4 is greater than 4/6. It's your turn to try. Let's compare 5/7 and 3/4. Find a common denominator for 5/7 and 3/4. Make equivalent fractions and fill in that blank. You might have chosen a different denominator. 28 would have worked, where we had 4 times 7 equaling 28, times 7 in the numerator as well. So 3/4 is just 21/28. 7 times 4 being 28. And then so we also multiply by 4 in the numerator. And 5 times 4 is 20. So 5/7 is equivalent to 20/28, just as 3/4 is equivalent to 21/28. And in this case, 20 is less than 21. We came up with that common denominator. Here's another one for you to try. 5/8 and 6/10. Hit pause and try that, please. You might have chosen 40 as your common denominator. Some of you might have chosen 80. If we did choose 40, it's because 10 times 4 is 40. And if we multiplied by 4 in the denominator, we multiply by 4 in the numerator to get 24/40. To get to 40 in the denominator for 5/8, we multiply by 5 as well. In the numerator, we also multiply by 5. 5 times 5 is 25. So now we're comparing 25/40 with 24/40, and since the denominator is the same, we can compare 25 with 24. 25 is greater than 24, so that 5/8 is greater than 6/10. This method right here is much more accurate than trying to draw a number line or trying to draw unit bars. If I was to try and draw a unit bar representing 5/8, I could try to do so, and I could try to do so really carefully. But then once I run up with 6/10 and I make that same unit bar length, tenths you say, okay, in half, each of those is supposed to be divided into 5 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I shaded them in, once we start doing something like this, where we start looking at this here and we say, okay, well that's 5/8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look how close those were, 25/40 and 24/40. Really, we're really not sure as to, we're looking at our unit bars, really not sure which one really is bigger because it's not as accurate. That's why I want you to use this way here to find that common denominator. Let me show you a simpler way, and then if you find this way works better for you, then fine. 2 6 7/15 to compare them. What we do is we look at the other denominator, and then so we've got 15 here. We're looking at the other denominator of 6, and then so what we do over here is we multiply by 6. Not only in the numerator, but also in the denominator. So in the denominator, we're going to end up with 15 times 6. Now on the other side, so that it is common, we're going to also multiply by the other denominator. And then so if we multiply by the other denominator is 15. If we do that in the denominator, we better do that in the numerator. And then so we'll have equivalent fractions for each of those there. 7 times 6 is 42. And then 15 times 6 is 80. 15 times 6 still is 80. And 15 times 2 is 30. So 2 6 is equivalent to 30. Oops, I moved it. Is equivalent to 30/80. And 7/15 is equivalent to 42/80. And since 30 is less than 42, 2 6 is less than 7/15. One last you try, and you'll be done with the video today. So, by the video, what did it tell you to do? To find that common denominator, to be able to compare these. Hit pause, you try. Here we go. We multiply by the other denominator, not only in the numerator, but also in the denominator. So you see here, other denominator was 4. That's why we multiplied by 4 in the numerator and the denominator. The other denominator was 11. That's why we went times 11 there and times 11 there. So the common denominator now is 44. It's common. Figuring out the numerator, 7 times 4 that is 28. And 11 times 3 is 33. And 33 is bigger than 28, so that we put a greater than sign there. 3/4 is greater than 7/11. And this is how we compare fractions, using a common denominator.